Hello, everyone. Today we got to play Settlers of America. So
Happy 4th of July!
Happy 4th of July! So super excited to get this game out and play. But before we get into it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell because we have a lot of cool things coming up. There's one I'm super excited about that I actually sat and edited for multiple hours today. So I'm super excited about that one.
Before telling me that I needed to take over and do it for her.
But he didn't, and I'm
Not
still
yet.
working on it. So, yeah. So, Rob, tell us more about the game.
All right, so Catan Histories, Settlers of America is the full name of the game. It plays 3 to 4 people. Board Game Geek rating is 6.8. Designed by the classic Klaus Tuber. I assume that's how you pronounce it, right? But the art, quite a few people. David Cockard, Pete Finland, Harold Leask, and Mark Zudd. It's published by Mayfair Games. The MSRP is $65, but I didn't see it readily available. But I did find it on Amazon for $88. eBay had it for $59. Geek Market had a couple of used copies. I don't know the condition, but for $30.
Well, I mean, this is a Mayfair game, and Mayfair's been
It's
out of business for
a couple years now.
Few years. So.
All right, so let's get into quality of pieces. So, literally, this is Catan. Except instead of knights, you actually get little trains. So guys, also the settler pieces, they're like a wagon.
Instead of roads, you get rails, which don't look anything like rails to me, but
They look like roads.
kind of looks like if you connect them up, it could be like a canal.
Oh yeah.
It's an aqueduct.
So, literally a 5 because this is actually kind of what we base our standards on, right?
Well, we base it on base Catan.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has got a little bit more to it.
It's a
You
nicer board,
got some
for sure.
different
Okay.
carved pieces. You don't just have cities
Oh,
and
that's true.
settlements. The cards are not textured. These are the standard
But they're
Catan cards. Bigger?
Yeah,
No,
I
they're
thought the
same.
Catan
No,
card
they're the
was
same.
pretty much
smaller.
standard.
They're the same size.
Yeah, that's pretty much standard. One of the problems with it was the cheat sheets that they gave everybody didn't have all the options. One of the options that's on the board version of the cheat sheet actually has all of them, so it's missing the one where you can actually buy resource cards with coin. So that's to me a fault in the design. Yeah, I'm probably I think I'll give it a 5.5 because it's got American colored dice and
Okay.
it's got a few other pieces that are carved differently. I mean, it's more than just a piece of straight wood for the roads.
I guess that is fair.
Yeah, I think 5.5 is a good score.
Yeah, I'll change mine to 5.5 because of that. You convinced me.
And it's got a board, which is different.
Yeah. So moving on to theme. So basically, you are settling America. You're sending your trains out west, and you're building towns. And when you connect the towns, you get money. So I do think there's a little bit of theme in here. However, I don't feel like a huge Five Goes West kind of feel to this.
Well, I do like the fact that it kind of forces you to go west. I mean, they're trying. The design of this is to basically to mimic the western spread in America, and to simulate that, basically, there's the tokens that you would normally use for production get moved as you move westward, so the East Coast becomes less prosperous.
Well, they do have that same mechanism in Seafarers too, so that's not something new.
You discovery of tokens in Seafarers, but you don't remove the original coast ones. Don't go
Yeah,
away.
they turn into the barren. Yeah, your main island becomes more barren, and the stuff pushes out.
I don't recall that being the way Seafarers work, but okay.
I think one interesting thing too is it seems like with the number, as you progress west, your numbered chits will move with you. And so like on the East Coast, there look like to be, other than the 8 and the 5, it looks like most of the numbers are kind of harder to get. Whereas on the other coast, other than the chits themselves, are easier numbers to get. I don't know if that's a strategy that they developed that, again, trying to make you move west, or maybe some of the numbers could be easier to roll on. But all of them, other than the 9s, these were all high numbers. So I thought that was interesting that these numbers are harder to roll on as you moved west.
Yeah, they probably did it as a balancing.
And the fact that since you're taking them over here, you're not going to roll on your old settlements that you had before.
You mean you'll roll some, because not
Well,
all
yeah,
of the tokens.
but the ones that had the tokens.
Well, I mean, that's what I kind of appreciated, is that you weren't as, you still had some functionality in the old ones, but not a huge functionality in the old ones. So I thought that was kind of cool.
I thought it was kind of a neat idea, though.
Yeah, I totally get that. So, what would you guys score it?
I mean, it's Catan. I mean, it's a pretty layered on theme. I don't think there's anything about it that makes it feel like you're exploring or.
Well, I will give one thing. I don't know if we want to count this as rules or if we want to count it as theme, because it's kind of both. In the rule book, the back section of the book, the almanac, goes through all the components of Catan and all the pieces in this game, and basically gives the tie-in to the history in America of how important it was, like the cattle, the cavalry, and the cars.
That's cool.
This is really a neat feature that was put into
that
this
is
book.
Definitely more in theme, I would think.
So, yeah, I mean, it's in the rule book, but it's really thematic because it goes through, explains the history of each of the things.
That would have been great to know, but no one told me that.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't relevant to the gameplay. We were going over gameplay.
It's kind of relevant theme.
For theme, I think it is.
Theme.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up now during the theme.
Yeah, but it's after the fact. I didn't feel it thematically. It's like, oh.
It would have changed your feel of the game as you're
interesting.
playing.
Maybe.
We don't know. We didn't get to
I don't
play
know
it.
now. It's too late.
It's not play. It's just telling you the history of grain in the United States.
You can't argue that sometimes if it's got some theme, it does help with gameplay. And so if you know the theme behind it, you can kind of help smooth things out or just makes things make sense on what you do.
Yeah, I think, but also if you have a strong theme, you can kind of play with the game a little bit more.
Right.
But it's America. You guys know what the theme of America is.
So, all right. Give it a score, though.
I think I would score it a 6.
Okay. What about you?
Given that, I'm going to give it a 6.5. I don't think it's heavy, but I do like that they went through 3 pages worth of documentation on how the Catan elements relate to America.
And I think I would have scored a little bit higher if I knew it, but I didn't read it myself, so I can't give it a score if I don't know the theme myself.
Yeah. So I'll split it between you guys, 6.25, because I do think it deserves a little bit higher because of that in there. But again, I didn't get to read it, so I'll split it. All right. So moving on to rules. We've already kind of touched a little bit because you.
So they have this really cool section in the rule book.
All right, tell us more about the actual. We kind of want to.
So the rule. I mean, if you know Catan, it's really simple.
Mm-hmm.
This one. It has a few different rules we'll go over in the gameplay aspect, but it's basically your standard Catan fare. Roll dice and you trigger, production and, robber potentially. So nothing special. But it is laid out pretty nice, and the one thing it doesn't really do is kind of break out and say, these are the new features if you're, familiar with Catan, right. Which I always like to see that in a book is, if it's a game that everybody's familiar with and you're making modifications to the rules, you can have a section that just says, here's what's different.
Right.
And so it gets people into the game faster. In this case, it didn't have that. There's actually about 8-9 pages of rules total. And there's it's pretty well done. There's no pictures. Well, there's a couple example pictures in here. I guess it's pretty decent. I'll go ahead and give it a 7.5. I think it's not bad. It taught the game. There was no confusion, except for a few rules that we forgot along the way, but we remembered them halfway through, so we were good.
Okay. So moving on to gameplay, we're just going to go over the difference of Catan because I think many people are pretty familiar with Catan. So the differences are really in the fact that the tokens end up moving as you go across to the west and discover different locations. And those tokens get taken from the farthest left and moving over. The other piece of it is that the end is different, the end of game. So the end of game is actually related to once you actually build all your settlements and place down these square cubes across different people's settlements. Once that is completed, the game ends and the person who did that wins. So it's a little bit different in the fact that before you're reaching to a victory point count, that is not the case. You're just trying to lay out these settlements as quickly as possible and removing the.
Well,
removing
I
the-
think that's a big
Yeah.
point because you can hide points in Catan. You can't hide that here.
Yeah.
One of the big differences, though, is there's no roads to connect your settlements in this. There's no cities at all, and the settlements are really kind of cosmetic. The real thing is your carriages or whatever.
Your settlers.
These are your settlers that have to travel to locations, and that becomes wherever they settle. That's where you place one of these, but you don't actually pay resources to build a settlement.
And you don't have to have that road to connect to it. So
Yeah.
you can use, there doesn't have to be anything.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's just preset city locations where you have to decide to settle yourself in.
Yeah, and then to drop off the cubes, you're going to take your railroad, your train, and you're going to go across the different paths until you reach to other people's settlements. Now, the thing that I liked about this is in Old Catan, your roads can block you. That is not the case here. You just have to pay a coin to the person's railroad that you are using, or the rail that you're using. So I thought that was actually very beneficial in the fact that you're not necessarily blocking, but you do get a benefit for building the road.
And that's a strategy you can do, where you can build your railroad to where they have to use it, so at least you get a little bit of money.
Right.
Yeah.
And your rails connecting to a location for a settlement
That's not
will give you revenue from money. So when you connect to locations for the first time, connect to a city location, whether there's an actual settlement there or not is irrelevant. But if you connect to a city location, you will get coin for each section of rail that you cross. And it may be that if some of that rail belongs to another player, they might get coin too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think those are the key differences. Obviously, there's little cost differences for the different items, but very similar
and the
to
dev
the cheat
cards
sheet.
associated with those
Oh,
newer
yeah.
actions as well. But in effect, they're basically the same. It's just instead of Monopoly road building, you be able to move a bunch of spaces. But they're similar.
Yeah, they're very similar in the fact that their special abilities with the Devo cards are just pertaining more in line with this.
Yeah, so there's really no victory
mechanics.
points in this game.
Right.
It's just whoever gets their cubes delivered.
Yeah, the thing I forgot to mention is the coin. So that's a big, huge difference because Catan, you used to just strictly have resources.
Right.
That is not the case. You have coins. You have coins when you build into a city for the first, or into a settlement for the first time. So if that settlement is already connected to the railroad, then you don't get money for it. But if it's not been connected, then you get the additional resources. You also get coins when you build settlements at certain locations. You also get coins when people use your railroads. And there's one other one I'm forgetting.
I think that's it. But the key thing is that you use the coin, like Randy mentioned earlier, to buy resources, but you couldn't do that in the original Catan either.
Yeah.
And there's always a 3-for-1 trade. So it's not the 4-for-1, or you get the trade routes, reduce it to a 2-to-1.
Yeah.
And you can still trade with other people as
we
well.
very minimally traded with each other in this game.
And we were actually very nice on the exchange rates too, because 1-for-1, I'm not used to that. We're pretty brutal in my family. So, and in fact, the name I knew Catan by originally, I didn't know it was called Catan. I just thought it was called Bastard. Like everyone's like, let's go play Bastard, and I was like, okay. And I had the game already set up. Yeah, no, dude, for like the first 2 years that I've played Catan, I just thought
You never saw the box?
No, I never.
Well, that's how she spelled bastard.
C-A-T-A-N.
Sure. No, but seriously, everyone's just like, let's
Wow.
go play Bastard, and most of the time they had already set it up, so I didn't even know.
That's funny.
And it's because you scream at people, Bastard,
Yeah.
So I thought that was actually pretty funny. I eventually learned it was Catan because I was like, hey, I really want this game. Oh, look, it's not called Bastard.
Somebody might be in trouble for calling a game. I'm calling it.
But yeah, so that's kind of my history with Catan. But let's give it a score, guys.
I think overall I had a good time. I think it felt very familiar with regular Settlers of Catan. I mean, it's little nuanced differences, but not dramatically different, and was able to ease into it really well. A little bit better in just base Catan. So I think I would give it a 6.
What about you, Randy?
I'm with Rob as far as it's a little bit better than base Catan. I'm not sure what that little bit is for me. It's I mean, I like the fact that you're crossing the country,
Yeah.
and the fact that it's moving along with you. I don't know that I feel like it's whole point worth better. I think it's probably about more of a 5.5 for me.
Well, I think I went a whole point because to Miranda's point, I like being able to use other people's roads.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. I like being able to buy cards, so I'm not limited to only to what I roll.
Yeah.
And which is very frustrating and settlers.
Yeah. Oh, and you also get a free coin, which is the rule we forgot.
Right. If
you have no production.
So I
That's
think that's a point worth of difference there.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go at 6 because of that. Because it does suck when you play Catan and the rolls just keep coming up and you get nothing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I agree. There is some in some of the expansions. There's modifications around that. Like if you don't get resources, you get a card. I think in Knights and Cities.
Yeah, Cities and Knights you can build up, but that's one of the reasons Cities and Knights ranks higher than Catan.
Yeah. So I agree with you guys. I think this is a 6. It's a pretty good Catan game. I'll definitely play it again. Would you guys play it again?
Sure.
Yeah. Especially on 4th of July because we don't have a lot of choices.
Hey, I sent you a list. You just didn't have any, which confuses the crap out of me. I was like, what do you mean you don't have these games? I'm confused. So
did you think you sent him to the wrong number?
That's where I was like, did I actually just send this to Robert? Maybe I sent. I didn't know what was going on.
I think she just said your collection sucks, Rob.
But it does compared to yours. 400 to over 3,000 is a bit of a difference.
400 is pretty good, though.
I'm not saying it's bad, but it's definitely less than that.
When someone's like, I like board games, and they're like, hey, come look at my collection, and it's on a shelf, I'm like, one shelf, I'm like,
yeah, this
looks great.
It's not the size, it's what you do with it.
Right.
I think you're doing it wrong. We haven't got to play like a third of these, okay? All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and hopefully you guys had fun. I know we did. So we hope to catch you later. And again, happy 4th of July. Bye.
Bye.